The House of the Mouse just cannot catch a break, can it? And that's a very good thing. That is a tremendously good thing, as this is very much so a case of the field mice coming home to roost. As Disney, the hole it finds itself in, more correctly, is one entirely of its own crafting. Every feet of this hole, this canyon, this Grand Canyon, this Mariana's Trench of utter absolute shit the company finds itself in, has been lovingly shoveled by the company itself. Nobody forced Disney to be an incredibly massive leech on the taxpayers' money. Nobody forced Disney to renege on every one of its promises made to Florida in return for the countless special privileges it received. And nobody forced Disney to, well, institute a culture of legalized bribery to make sure the privileges continued. And this is all detailed in the report on past practices of the Reedy Creek Improvement District released a few days ago, and done of course by the new controlling government entity that's supposed to be looking after Disney, the same entity that for years was in Disney's pocket. Actually no, that's incorrect. They were not in Disney's pocket because Disney charged the Florida government for the bribes it offered to the government people intended to oversee it. I'm not kidding. This was actually reality. Okay, so there's a few key takeaways from this report here. First and foremost, it refers to Disney as an experimental monarchy, an absolute monarchy within Florida. And you know what? That's a good way of putting it, but it's so much worse than that. At least if Disney truly was an independent state within the borders of Florida, then presumably it would provide for its own people. It would get its own taxes from its people and provide rudimentary services like education or hospitals. None of which Disney did. Instead, Disney appears to have been near solely the recipient of tremendous and unnatural benefits from the state of Florida, whilst offering nothing in return. Now, we're not going to delve too deeply into the history of the Reedy Creek Development District here, but as the report goes on to point out, Disney had a lot of, commitments. They were supposed to build essentially 2 entire cities to support itself. It was supposed to build its own infrastructure, supposed to build its own housing for its 100,000 employees. It was supposed to build its own hospitals, its own education systems, etc., etc., etc. It was essentially supposed to, do what the name implied, develop Reedy Creek County. That was the point of the Reedy Creek Improvement District. The improvement of the district, which never happened. And what improvements were made were usually made either solely for Disney's benefits or at the cost of the taxpayers. Like, for example, when $700 million was spent on making enormous parking complexes that served only Disney, its customers, and its workers, and pretty much nobody else. Or that time that the Oversight Board decided to spend $70 million on purchasing utilities from Disney, which they simply apparently forgot to notarize. Oh yes, because, the government, it's one of those entities that simply just spends tens of millions of dollars and forgets to write it down. This may have something to do as well, by the way, that the board did not keep notes of its meetings. It did not keep recordings, nor, of course, then, in turn, did they ever make any of it public. So God alone knows what went on in these meetings. Or, well, we've got a decent inkling, actually, because, okay, the bribery nonsense, right? This is probably the single most severe charge that is levied against Disney, and it seems to have a great deal of weight behind it, as Disney started offering up various employee benefits to the members of the Improvement District, the people who were again supposed to be holding them on their leash. Things like yearly passes, or even tickets that could be given or gifted or given out to anyone, so you didn't have to give a name to it, you simply had a white ticket that you could give to absolutely anybody. Even so far as giving enormous discounts, 50% discounts on Disney cruises, etc. Countless benefits. Benefits usually kept only for, as they called it, Disney cast members, including access to exclusive merchandise, which, I have a sneaking suspicion some of that may have found its way onto eBay at extreme prices, but it's merely my own speculations, of course. Why would people do this? Why would somebody purchase something exclusive at a deep discount and then decide to benefit from it? Who knows? And initially, the cost for these various goods was actually borne by Disney. Now, even then, that is impropriety at best, as you're going to the government officials supposed to keep you on a leash and going, hey, here's a free ticket to Disneyland Resort. Hey, here's a discount. Hey, here's a trip on our luxury cruise line. It's 50% off. That's bad and should have been refused outright, but then eventually, here's the rich part, Disney started charging the Reedy Creek Improvement District for the goods it offered them. Disney actually had the sheer, titanic, planet-sized brass balls required to have the state of Florida pay for the benefits used to bribe the employees of the state of Florida. And of course, again, theoretically, I don't know if this meets the definition of bribery within Florida. I don't know much about Floridan law. But a lot of this was given to them as if it was coming from Disney. It was given the veneer of this being Disney things, Disney gifts. And they even often referred to, or at the very least the opinion, the perception of the people was that they were Disney employees first, and government employees a distant second. And considering who's currently, buttering you up, that is hardly a difficult misconception to develop, is it? And this isn't even the worst of it. Obviously, the development district gave tons of special privileges to Disney, including apparently attempts to sign 10-year contracts. We're still sitting here, 30 years contract and 100 years contract in an attempt to tie the hands of the next development crew that came in after them. That was the one appointed by Ron DeSantis, of course, to look after Disney and see if they'd actually been doing what they were supposed to do. Turns out they hadn't. They also gave them blanket permission to do next to anything and everything when it comes to legislation, zoning laws, regulations on fire safety, all of this nonsense, even apparently giving the ability to build a nuclear power plant, should they choose to do so, and an airport. Alrighty then, that serves to illustrate the sweeping nature of their absolute power within the development district. And worse still, the government subsidies just kind of continued to the point of even providing policing for them. Apparently, there was about $8 million spent on off-duty police officers for security at Disney gatherings. Now, normally, apparently, according to the report, anybody else needs to pay for this. If you want extra police security, you're going to have to actually, pay up. You've got to do that yourself. You've got to hire them yourself. For Disney, they got the government to pay for that too, to the tune of $8 million of taxpayer money. In other words, the taxpayers were paying for their police to guard Disney's private corporate property. You better start believing in cyberpunk dystopian horror stories, because you are in one. I do love the fact that we are actually living in the cyberpunk dystopia, and yet We don't have got any of the cool shit. Where are the public cybernetic enhancement that you can just buy at a corner kiosk? Where are the cool-ass cars, the flying hover vehicles? We don't get none of that. Only the corporate and government overreach and incestuous intermingling, I do suppose. Worse still than all of this is, of course, the fact that it was allowed to go on and on and on and on. Because if all of this ridiculous nonsense happened once, and then the legislature was supposed to overlook all of this, said, no, this is obviously, if it's not illegal, it is improper at absolute best, stop it, then fair enough. Disney tried its luck. It reached down into the cookie jar and saw if it couldn't get away with something. All right, I can almost respect that. But the fact that it not only got away with it, but continued to get away with it for decades and decades and decades, and is now upset that their hand is finally being slapped. We've moved far beyond bald now, and into the realms of just kind of dickish and asshole-ish. Though, to be fair as well to Disney, they're not exactly in a great position right now, are they? The overwhelming majority of their actual positive income is coming from their parks. Their parks and their cruise lines is what's actually keeping Disney afloat right now, as the rest of the company is simply existing on the nostalgia-fueled inertia of things they made decades ago. Nobody's watching modern Disney content. Disney content nowadays is doing nothing but erode the brand. They're existing of, well, Snow Whites and Lion Kings and stuff. Things that were made by a completely different generation for a completely different audience. I mean, the core audience of Disney today isn't kids, it's people in their 30s and their 40s. With, memories of good old Disney. That's people who are like Disney now, like heavy quotation marks intended. Even Star Wars, one of the largest entertainment entities ever, has been turned into a net loss for Disney. If they are deprived now of the countless special benefits and the unfathomable quantities of cash they are given via the Reedy Creek Development District, that will likely probably end Disney, or at the very least force them to cut back into, well, becoming honest, shall we say. You want to subsist purely off nostalgia? Well, you might be able to keep the parks, but everything else has got to go. And that sounds pretty nice, honestly. Let's just make everything a public entity, shall we? Split off Marvel, split off Star Wars, give it to the public. Of course, that's not what actually is going to happen, as if Disney does go belly up, it'll simply be bought up by Google or something. Adding yet further to the rather unfortunate monopolistic nature of modern-day American super corporations, which a lot of our problems can be traced directly back to that and the failures of other other government entities of overseeing the corporations they were supposed to be leashing. But I guess that's a problem for tomorrow. One that does need to be dealt with at some point, as there is a lot of companies in America that might deserve the Disney treatment, but oh well. Maybe we can even make it popular. Maybe we can even make this a good way for politicians to gain a good amount of traction and clout. Bullying corporations. See, that is the ideal situation we should be in. Corporations should try to do everything they can to be profitable, no matter how scummy and immoral. And then the government should step in and go, no, our voters have told us that they don't like you, and they want us to punish you for them. Democracy, the way it was always intended to work. The stick above all. The stick uber alles as far as corporations are concerned. The problem being that the stick is usually, reserved for the civilian populace rather than the people with money, but oh well, we're heading more in a different direction now. Anyways, Disney, is in very, very, very deep shit, and probably this might be a hole that it will not be able to extricate itself from, as it is targeting the core of their business. And it would not be such a bad thing if an example was made. Until next time, I've been Arch, thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.